I'm going to demonstrate in this lesson, illustrate how we get from a 3D model in any 3D modeling program. I'm using Revit architecture here. I have this construction document layout view of a kitchen, and what I'd like to do is generate this this Photoshop composited layered view from this model, and then show the steps involved in doing that. It's actually simpler than it appears. Let's start by maximizing the Revit window and talk a little bit about that. So the first thing you want to do is generate a well-ordered perspective, and what I mean by that is one that is interesting, that doesn't look directly into a corner, that is a two-point perspective that exaggerates one side while leaving the other at a gentle angle. I'll illustrate that by generating, holding the camera at a point here, looking in this direction. Right, so this is going to give me a severe angle to my left and a gentle angle at the wall to which I'm almost perpendicular. Click once, and this is the essence of the two-point perspective. There's a little bit of third dimension distortion, which we can eliminate by just gently rotating this view. Okay, so that is about what I'd like to see. Your vertical lines want to be essentially vertical. I'm probably not generating the same view as exists in that model. I could. Let's see if we can get closer to that. I think the camera is placed here, and I was looking that way. Let's see what that does for us. Okay, that's more like the view in the Photoshop file. Is that right? Yeah, that'll do. The column occludes a view of the corner in that case, but that's okay. It doesn't, for illustrative purposes, that'll be fine. Then the second thing you want to do is generate a color base. Now, Revit allows you to render this point of view fairly easily. I'm going to use sun and artificial light, though those are south-facing windows, and depending on the time of day, that light is probably going to come streaming in. Let's do a draft render and see what it looks like. So a good deal of this work is done ahead of time. So number one is generate a well-ordered perspective. Number two is to create a color base layer, and that's, it doesn't have to be drop dead gorgeous. It just has to have color and a light source. We can Photoshop in what's going on outside of the model afterwards. Let's change this from draft to medium. It shouldn't take very long. None of these renderings should take longer than 10 minutes. So those stories about my model, I left my model overnight and it's still not done, something's amiss. Right. Now, there isn't a real lot of color applied here. That's stuff that we can do later, but or you can do it in the rendering, but the Photoshop, Revit isn't an end in itself. It's the compositing that's later done in Photoshop that generates the most compelling illustration of a design idea. I may stop at this point and just call this video color layer. One thing that's important is the output settings. So in order, I'm going to change this to 300 dpi print output. We need both a hidden line drawing. Ideally, we have a hidden line drawing, a wireframe drawing, and a color base that we bring into Photoshop to composite and combine the generated drawing. They all have to be exactly the same size naturally. So once we have roughly the point of view that we need, set the resolution to a print resolution, which will give you a fixed set of pixel dimensions. Remember, in this case, 1853 by 1350, so when we generate the hidden line drawing, we're going to have the same image size. This is going to take a little bit longer to render, so I may pause the video here at 7 minutes or so and let that render offline and then start up again once it ends. So that I left the dialog box open to illustrate that the elapsed time for medium quality rendering is 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So it didn't have to run overnight. Let's close this dialog. And I'm going to export this image to my document folder. I'm going to save the image of a known pixel dimensions, kitchen toward south, color base. JPEG is fine for now. Then I'm going to show the model. There's my line drawing. And at the same resolution, I'm going to export this view. Kitchen hidden line. It's quite possible that I may have to file export the view directly. So let's do that just in case. Images, image, and I'm going to select this view. It's the last 3D view that we didn't name it. So anyway, you basically will find the 3D view that we just created. It's probably one of these names that aren't named yet, and export. And then I'll pick up where we have the images that we need, and we'll move to Photoshop.